Thanks for everyone, well, not only just being here, but thank you all for coming to this convention. Like, this is an awesome thing we're doing, growing Wisconsin rugby, growing youth rugby, collegiate rugby, whatever it is. You guys are awesome for making rugby grow. So that's what we need, is more not grassroots, but more people educated, more people getting involved in rugby and applying strategies, tactics, all these things to it. So thank you all. Let's get started. So restarts, lineouts, and scrums. So this session is really catered towards forwards and 15 specific. My background, I'm a Wisconsin boy. I grew up just outside Waukesha County, played high school for Lake Country, and at that time there was only a few programs offering scholarships. So I made my way out to AIC, out in Springfield, Massachusetts. Played 5 years there. After that, I played down in Austin, Texas for a season. And then after injury, I started my coaching career. So for the past 4 years, I was coaching at the D1 level in Springfield, Massachusetts at my alma mater. And now I started a new rugby program in Grande, Ohio. So brand new varsity program. But what I put together here is not what we're currently doing. It's something that I learned throughout high school, throughout college, and semi-professional. Kind of what works. Make it simple, not the most dynamic, craziness, whatever. Just kind of a base, your bread and butter, kind of something that all your players can be on the same page for. So it's geared towards your forwards, your 15s. So we're here for backline stuff. Sorry, go to the next room for that. But yeah, so that's a little bit about me. So the outcome, so I'm not going to teach you how to have the perfect lifts, the perfect jumps, the scrum binds, the footing for it. My approach is the strategic approach to this. So you as coaches, you as captains, players, how do you teach your teammates? Because right in rugby, we can't call timeouts, we can't, in college, they're really particular with that technical zone. Gosh, if a coach steps out of it, you get a yellow card or whatever it is. So what we try to do is train our players that, one, to trust them, to educate them. So, certain zones of the field, if they're inside the 22, midfield, in their deep territory, inside their 22, you want to teach these concepts so your players can come together on the field, say, all right, we're going to go with this, line out, scrum, whatever it is, and then you can trust. And you as a coach can sit back and heck yeah, that's what we worked on all week. Now they're applying it to the match. Let's see. Yep. So the timeline, I scheduled it for an hour, but I think we're going to run by this really quick. We're going to start with restarts, lineouts, and scrums. And after each section of it, I want you guys to challenge me, ask me questions. You as coaches, ask me, previous seasons, what worked for you guys or what didn't work for you. Give me some scenarios, and maybe we can kind of walk through some of this stuff and just kind of talk a little bit. And afterwards, if you want to have a good conversation or whatever, I'm in the recruiting room as well, recruiting row. If you just want to talk about rugby or players, alums, whatever, we can chat all throughout the afternoon. All right. So when we're looking at restart kicks, you want to play to your strengths. So in general, if you're in high school boys, girls, collegiate level, club, you got to know your players. Like if you have a solid kicker that can kick it high and 10 every time, play to that strength. If you have a newer kicker to the game, maybe those deep kicks or those line drive kicks or those crossfield kicks, whatever it is, you have to know your personnel. And a big thing for me is so if we're kicking off the game, restarting the game, I like to test their kicker early on. One thing, so we would kick it deep, and I always have my winger on that side pressure the heck out of them. So you really want to isolate your winger to pressure their kicker, hopefully get inside their 22 so they kick it back to you. Because the whole idea of kicking off is to get the ball back, right? You don't want to play defense for 40 minutes. So test their kickers, and that's what I personally do. That's what works for us, is test their kicker, see if they kick it back to you. If it stays in play, then your back three can counter it, and you guys play offense. So this is our basic setup. I'm not a big believer in split kickoffs, so your forwards split or anything like that. I like to overload them on one side. So here are my blocks. My blue, I only got 7 there. My blue blocks are my forwards, and my red blocks are backline players. So I like to overload one side. I truly don't believe in splitting it because I just think it leaves gaps. I think you don't have an even defensive wall shape, because what I try to train, my concept is forward wall. So I want all 8 forwards kind of being one unit, applying pressure together. So if we do split kickoffs, you have 4 forwards on one side, 4 on the other, intermingled with some backs. That defensive wall shape really isn't there. And of course, every coach has their philosophy, but this works for me. For the teams that I've coached, I like having overloading one side, forwards one flat wall, and then that winger on the outside is pressuring. And one thing you as coaches have to train and educate is that wing needs to be bat out of hell, pressuring, because we're kicking deep. He's the only one, he or she's the only one applying pressure. So your forward's closest to the kicker. So just say that receiving team doesn't kick it back. That's our goal, is to test them deep and then to kick it back. If it's into touch or back into play, whatever it is. But just say they work it wide. They work it to the other side of the pitch. You want those forwards near the kicker to kind of fan out to help support your back line. Because if they're just running right at 3, your fly half and your 2 centers, they're going to need some help, because it sucks making solo open field tackles. So that's kicking deep. So I like to open up our games kicking deep, test their kickers to see how their back 3 is. If they're pretty weak, then we just utilize and isolate their back 3. But majority of the game, as the game slows down, or the game continues, my main kickoff restart strategy is high intent. So if you got a solid kicker that can just nail those high short kicks, utilize this where that winger as well is applying pressure. And not straight up pressure. We want them to run a J line, a hook line. Why? Because if those forwards are setting up to receive there and they don't time it right, they miss that kick or whatever it is, or just say they catch it and they pass it to their back line, that fast winger can get around and just cause disruption, cause chaos back there. So the biggest thing with kicking deep or kicking short is make your forwards one unit, one flat wall shape, because they're coming up together. And whatever wing is on that side, tell them that you have to put absolute pressure. So if they're kicking deep, they're chasing down that kicker. If you kick it short and 10, they're running a J line, kind of disrupting, causing chaos back there. So if your kicker is most comfortable kicking to the left side of the field, and that wing is just tired, whatever it is, feel free to keep swapping your wings back and forth. Just a little strategy, but make sure that wing applies pressure. Also with kicking short and 10, so your forward's actually applying pressure. We call it catback, where it's a tough skill to jump in the air as you're kicking off and catch that ball up in the air. So one thing we try to train is your forwards are coming up, hopefully your tall locks are just tapping it backwards, not forwards. Tell them to swipe it backwards, because 9, right behind the forward wall, 9's there to catch it and play onto the back line. So that was restart kickoffs. So now we go to kick receive. Majority of the time, a lot of times I hear just do an exploded scrum. This is the kind of setup that I like to go with, is you have your hooker typically your hooker up front, and they're not staring at the kicker. This is why I love crossover athletes. I teach them, like, be a basketball player. Put your back towards the sideline so you can see the kicker and see your teammates as well. Because if your team's really skilled, and you can master lifts on kick receive and stuff like that, your hooker can jump up in the front and front lift as well. Up here, you got 2 pods stacked up. Ideally, you want your main targets for receiving the ball are your locks and loose forwards. So with your 2 pods there, the front guys, I like to put my locks there. My tall guys to win those restart kicks, those short ones, and right behind them is a prop, ready to lift them up in the air and protect them. And then on the edge, you have a flanker. Right in the middle, you got your 8-man. You got a flanker on the inside too. So that's the basic concept of our setup. And a good thing that I teach every one of these players is, so just say the restart kick is by these doors here, and I'm one of the locks. I tell every kid, raise your outside hand. If that ball goes over your hand, that defers the person behind you or outside of you. So anything inside your hand towards the kicker, you're looking to at least get after it. All right? So like, it's good to have an overs call. I mean, I don't like saying overs. We call it darkness. So if I'm that lock looking to receive that ball and it goes over my hand, I say darkness, darkness. So then that's telling the players behind me, I can't get to it, because it's a lot easier to run onto the ball than it is to try to backtrack. So that's if the opposition lines up, they do forwards left, forwards right, whatever. That's kind of what you want. That works for us. That's kind of what I teach. Is stack 2 pods, have your hooker covering anything short or right at the 10. These 2 pods, they're not at the 10-meter line. They're a little bit farther back because I want them to run onto it. So your hooker is there for anything like a line drive kick or a short kick or anything like that. But if it's high in 10, you want those 2 pods to get underneath it, get a nice lift, catch it. So let's see here. Oh yeah. So every one of my type 5s, my props, hooker, and locks, I tell them if you get it, go into contact. So your type 5s, go into contact, draw in defenders. If you break the line, awesome. But your type 5s, just make it simple, tell them go into contact. Your loose forwards, your flanks, and your 8, I give them the option to go into contact or play it out to the back line. Why? Because just how naturally deep they are, if they've got time, if they've got space, I tell them to test it. And if they see a bunch of that forward wall attacking them, maybe they want to pass it out to the backs. But that's a general rule for me, is if you're a type 5 player, take it into contact. Draw in defenders, and then start our phase play. But if you're a loose forward, you have the option to take it in or pass it out to your 9-10 back line. All right, so I do see this a lot though, is teams do split their forwards. So what we try to do, I don't have a 10-meter line set up, but I basically just split 2 pods of 4, kind of in a box shape. Same concept, is I tell them, raise your outside hand. If the restart's by these doors, raise your outside hand. And if it goes over you, you guys should have a call. For us, it's darkness. So if it goes over you, don't backtrack and try to retrieve it. So your outside forwards on your touch, they should be close to the touch line. Because you don't want, if it goes over them, it's going out with the touch. So it's a tough concept, but really kind of have them in 4 pods and split your back line evenly amongst them. Because, I mean, if the kickoff is set up like this, it's just tough to prepare for. But we're really just talking about forwards specific. And if any one of these forwards gets the ball, I tell them to take it into contact. All 3 forwards in that ruck. So you have a ball carrier presenting the ball, 2 ruckers, and a seal. So that's a little bit on restarts. We got a couple minutes here. Does anybody have questions or scenarios you want to run through at all? And this is mainly geared towards the collegiate level. This is what I look for when I'm recruiting high school kids. Does anybody have any questions or any scenarios you want to run through? Yeah.
On the kicker seat, do you typically, like you mentioned on the two guys, do you typically have them lift to try and get that, or just there to support each other?
So if it's high and 10, yeah, because that's why your props right behind them. And they're not at the 10-meter line; they're further back. And I want them running onto it, getting underneath it. It's a hard skill. I played lock, and for me, that was the toughest skill. Was one, to get underneath it, track it, coordinate with your back lifter and the hooker in front of you, and one, to go up while a ball's coming down. To me, that's the hardest skill to learn. So I don't expect high school kids to really master those right away. I really didn't pick up that skill until I played down in Texas. So I do want them to lift, and most commonly it's just a back lift. It's just to get them off the air a little bit so the defense can't hit them in the air. It gives them like a clean catch at it. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Come on guys, challenge me. Anything.
Why not have a lock on your J line, collar, and jump?
So the J line, because I want that wing faster. Because I want that lock is competing for that ball. They're going for that catback. But that J line is a fast winger, and their main job is, if just say the receiving team gets a lift up in the air, but they miss it or whatever, or they bring it down and they pop to their scrum half, that fast wing there is
You're kind of playing an overthrow. Kind of thing.
yeah, overthrow and causing chaos, disrupting their attack. But yeah, my tall locks, they are competing for the ball in a flat line, but they're looking to tap it back. Anything else on restarts, guys?
Do anything specific for a 5-meter drop with that the new law?
Yes, that's one thing I want to add to this too. But so the drop goal, right? Drop.
Yeah,
Goal line drop.
You hold it up,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Goal line drop.
Right, and then you get a 5-meter drop.
Mm-hmm.
So you have something specific for that?
I would do. I taught them this year.
Because that wing going down the line, you know, you hold up, you get the 5-meter line. So you have your dropout, just kick right and deep. So your right wing knows, listen, if we get a 5-meter drop,
Yeah.
up, just make sure you're onside.
Yeah. So when I try, are you asking if we're kicking that 5 meter? That goal
Yeah,
line?
yeah, is that, I mean, do you have like an automatic kick, or is it one of these things, you sit there, you know,
So what?
for your
So
wrist
that's
to
the one.
drop out?
That's the one exception on this. Is what we taught this year is that winger doesn't chase. He stays back and kind of helps out that defensive line. I would have the forwards still do that forward wall, apply pressure, and win the ball back for us. But I have that wing stay back for extra support on the goal line.
So you're talking only a 10-meter kick then, you're trying to get it in the air versus trying to get that ball as far down and out of the 22.
We competed for it. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. That's what worked for us.
And it's fine, that's what I'm trying to think, so what I've seen is, what he's saying is the wing, get to the sideline with that wing, try to catch it on the fly, or automatically, you know, you're on the 30, 40, you're away from the goal line.
I mean, that, and honestly, that happened twice this year for us.
Yeah, it's not all.
Yeah, so that happened twice for us. And at that point, we were up so much, or we're up several, we had some safety, some comfort. We just said, let's win the ball back. So we had tall guys that got the ball back for us. That's the tough thing about coaching rugby is there's no black or white version of it. It's all gray, situational, depending on the field. All right, so I'm going to progress to lineouts. Lineouts are my favorite aspect of this game. So I'm not going to teach the proper lifting technique, the binds and all that stuff. But what I do a lot is spending time, like when we have a lineout, attacking lineout, I'm not saying anything from the sideline. My players know exactly what to do. They know where they're jumping, and I teach them why, how many numbers to put in. So I truly believe at every level, you should have 3 different variations of lineouts. A full lineout, 7-man, a 5-man, 4-man. One, because if you get a yellow card, an injury, you have subs in, reserves in, you kind of need to work with that. So if you get a yellow card and you're down and forward, go to a 5-man. But what we try to do this year, so I started a brand new varsity program. Had to teach all this stuff in a semester. So what I did is we didn't teach all this stuff in that first week. We taught the full lineup first for 2 weeks. And once they mastered that, we moved to 5-man lineout. Once they mastered that, 2 weeks later, we went to 4-man. One that kept our competition, they're watching film, they're scouting us. If we put in all these things right away, if we just do a 7-man lineout the first 2 weeks, they're gonna go, oh, Ryle, that's all they do is full-man lineouts. But then the next week, we got a 5-man lineout. 2 weeks later, we got a 4-man lineout. It's a lot tougher to do a 4-man lineout right away with an inexperienced team than to do a full. So what we did is we progressively taught full, 5-man lineouts, and 4. And depending on the official, I like to have my front lifter and my back lifters right at the tunnel, right at the line. But everyone else in there, in the lineout, I want them walking in. It's tough to track, and it's up to the official. Like sometimes they let us walk 5 meters in, sometimes the officials like, cut it out, just stand right there. So what we try to do is I don't want my lineout caller being a quarterback. I don't want them to be there going, green 18, set, go, right? I want them to, I have the hooker, the 9, and all forwards in. As they're walking to get the ball to set up the lineout, they're making their call, Ohio blue, whatever it is. So it's a pre-call walk-in. Because I don't want them going to the line, they're on attack. They're dictating where that ball goes. So, and then the lineout is set, not on the hooker. The hooker is set, ready for the thrower. Thrower's ready, set. They're prepared to throw wherever we're throwing at, jumping at. But the movement is based on the jumper. So as they make their pre-call, everyone knows who's jumping. Once they get to that line, the tunnel, the movement's on the jumper, and once they're up in the air, that's when the hooker goes. So this is a basic, for demonstration purposes, the calls. What are we calling it, this little pre-huddle? So we have a few of them. Off the top is our basic. Automatically, or if we don't make a call, we just need a quick lineup, whatever it is, our default is just off the top. Jumper goes up, catches it, off the top. So that call is anything O, off the top. So they could say orange, they could say Oklahoma. So those jumpers, those lifters, the 9, they know that, oh, Oklahoma, that's going off the top. Down and pop, so the jumper gets it, they come down, they pop it to the 9. It's anything D and P. So dragon purple to them. See, it's like the first letter, that's kind of the language we speak. Is down and pop, dragon purple. So they go to their pre-call, their little huddle, they go dragon purple, the thrower goes to the sideline, the jumpers walk in, we do our lineup. Down and maul. So the jumper goes up in the air, we call it dragon monster. Down and maul. And then insert is where our thrower comes in, we bring them down, we bring the jumper down, and we pop to our hooker. And we have a check call, so if they do come to line and we're jumping at the front and they've got a lift ready to go, check is just kind of, all right, we're switching up as we go. So we either go over or under where we're jumping. So this is where it makes sense. So the arrow is showing where we're attacking. The top is our full line out, middle is 5, down below is 4. All right? So I said at the 5 meter line and 15 is where our lifters, their heels are on the line, they're ready to go, ready to lift. But just say the top line out, the 7-man, we got 3 jumpers and 2 lifters. So those are the 5 that are walking in. And it's up to the official. They let them 1 step in or whatever it is. We have 5 people walking in. That way it's not predictable. And I don't want, on attack, I don't want You know, the front jumper all ready to go, pre-bound, because it's very predictable where it's going. That's why I like them walking in. Same thing with the 5-man. You got your front and back lifter set, ready to go. You got 3 guys walking in. In the 4-man, you got 2 lifters. That's a lot of ground to cover, so they're a little bit inside those channels. Same thing, 2 jumpers go in. So, what we do as well is for the 7-man lineout, we have pockets where we're jumping. 3 places where we're jumping, A, B, and C. So our jumpers know if we call Apple or Arizona, that's where we're jumping. We're calling banana, blue, we're jumping in the middle. California, we're jumping at the 3rd pocket. And this is just an example. So if we call insert, so if we call banana igloo, insert I, igloo, we're going to lift at the B, and then that hook, that thrower is going to come in. We bring the jumper down, pops the hooker, and they attack on the edge. So, one thing I try to do is I always start my scrum halves near the front pop. Because if they start in the middle, just say we lift at the front. Now the scrummy has to go back towards the touch and then go back towards the 10. So I always teach my 9s to start closest to the 5-meter line. So if we throw it B or C, they can just go 1 movement back. But just say that 9 is at the B, he has to go backwards and then towards 10. My favorite lineout is the 5-man lineout. 1, it gives you more space, more options to jump actually too, and you've got 2 big crash runners running off your 10. And I like having all my 10s, I like having them having an inside option, outside option. And the tough thing you gotta do is teach this man here to not get in the way, right? Because you've got centers, you know, this main man here, person, needs to just get out of the way, not disrupt much, but still be an option. And 10 has an inside option as well. So here, we got 3 guys walking in. Scrum half is still by the 5-meter line. This is when you have a team that has good continuity, good experience, they know how to work with each other, good timing. You know, this is my favorite lineout. It just gives you more space, more options on attack as well. And same thing too, you can do mauls with 5-man. Not preferred, but you can still do the inserts, the mauls, the down and pops off the top, things like that. The 4-man's the toughest, a lot of ground to cover. I mean, if we're in, actually here, they have 4 options where they can jump. So, same thing, 10, first receiver still has 2 options. Our last forward is running kind of like a skip line too, attacking their back line. So I'm gonna go through a few examples here. So we're going back to our 7, 5, and 4. So each jumper, what we do, so I'm lucky on my team right now, is a lot of guys are from different states. So whoever that jumper is, their name, or like we just say, like the front jumper is from Ohio, the middle's from Florida, and the 3rd is from Texas. So when they get in their pre-huddle, we can say Apple, Ohio. That means the front jumper is getting lifted at the front pocket there. So in the full lineup, we could do Texas banana. So as they walk in, that back jumper can step up to line and go to the B banana right there. So that's one thing. So to me, that's simple. You know, I don't want these play callers to be a quarterback at the line. I don't want them calling things on the spot because defensively, teams can pick up on your calls. If you're yelling, you know, Rhino, whatever it is, they can kind of pick up on what plays you're doing. So the ball goes into touch. Train your forwards to get together. You know, take your time, walk. All right, we're gonna do Florida, California, or Florida cherry. So we know that middle jumper is gonna go to the back. And one thing that gets tough, right? So it's easy just for Ohio to jump at A, Florida to jump at B, Texas to jump at C. That's easy. But as your team progresses, as you're playing tougher competition, they can predict where things are going. You're going to try to move those jumpers around in different pockets. So just say you call Florida Cherry. That's 7-man lineup, Florida Cherry. So your jumpers, your 5 people in the middle, they walk up. If Florida's going back to Cherry, let them walk down the tunnel. So that front lifter and that back jumper, just tell them to step back and let the jumper have the rights to that line. Does that make sense at all? And one thing I learned too, so if a jumper is retreating, if they're going back to a different pocket, one thing that didn't work for me is backing up and then trying to time a jump. I train my jumpers, if they're ever retreating backwards to a different pod, literally run to it, turn around, and then jump. That way, one, you get to the spot quicker, but as you turn around, you can see your front lifter get there, and then you have a good timed lift. So in the case of a 7-man line out, 5-man line out, that front lifter on the 5-meter line and the back lifter on the 15, they don't move at all. So if we're ever jumping A or C, that back lifter is dictating how far they go forward or how far they go back. So a lot of this is repetition, a lot of this is coordination, and your players just knowing how to work with each other. So I suggest just rep it out a lot. You as a coach in the training sessions, every time, call it out. Don't just say, all right, do it again. So if you call Ohio banana and they mess it up, don't just go, all right, do it again. Keep using the language, keep using the terminology so they can pick it up and not have those brain farts in the game. Yeah, that's it for lineouts. Does that make sense? So to me, this is simple, but that's because it's the language that I use. But does anybody have questions or anything you have on the calling card? Yeah.
You have a bread and butter lineout you like when you're 10 meters out or closer?
I prefer to wall, yes, 7-man wall. Honestly, so what I try to do is my strongest jumper is typically in the middle. My strongest jumper is in the middle. The next strongest jumper is in the C, and then the least strongest jumper is in the front. Why? Because usually the defense has a pod ready to go to get lifted there, so you're really not going to hit that A jumper often. So your stronger jumper is usually in the middle, second strongest in the back. So, and 2, the middle jumper usually is more coordinated, they can do lifts as well. But I prefer a 7, if we're on the 5-meter line or whatever, 10-meter line, whatever it is, I prefer to jump in the middle, full line out, ball, and then kind of incorporate insert as well. So if they contest the maul, or if a maul's formed, we have the hooker coming around, taking that ball, attacking the edge. That's what I prefer to do. It's honestly what it is. You can get very advanced with whatever plays you run off the back of a wall or off the top, whatever it is. But at the end of the day, it comes down to the skills, the mechanics, and just straight up getting a guy up in the air as high as you can. So don't take too much, don't put too much time on making these plays, exotic plays, whatever it is. At the end of the day, 90% of it is the technical of just getting your feet together and lifting somebody up in the air as high as possible, executing it. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah?
Can you go into more detail on the timing of having your jumpers get up to the lineout and get in their position?
So walking into it?
Yeah, I have trouble figuring out.
Yeah, so you got your front lifters setting, the tunnel, the channel where you have to throw down. So whether it's a full line out, 5 or 4-man, you have to go to the official too. Like we've had games this year where they could walk in, no problem. Or we've had games where the official just says, nope, can't do that. So you have to, if the official doesn't let you walk in, that's where that pre-huddle goes into. where you're making your calls. As soon as your thrower has that ball, your players are kind of, walking into it, and then like as both your lifters and jumpers get set, that's just when you go up. Walking in is really 2 or 3 steps, and just say you're the Florida jumper, right? So that jumper, the Florida jumper, dictates when we make our movements, when we go. So as they're walking in, that Florida jumper, just say we're going to beat Florida banana. That middle jumper, as soon as they walk in, if the lifters see, all right, the jumper now moves here, that's when the lifters go. Does that make sense? Yeah, so the movement is off of whoever's jumping. If we're in a full lineup and we go Texas, Apple, Texas, Apple, Texas jumper is going to walk in, and they might pause for a second. But as soon as Texas moves forward to go to Apple, that's when everybody else moves as well. So a lot of times they say movements on the hooker. I want my hooker just focus on making a good throw. So they're ready to go, they're set. Our movement when we go is all on the jumpers. Yeah. Any other questions? So defensively, I said, we don't go too much into depth on defensive lineouts. We really go on execution. So all we do is we match numbers, and I always have a front pod ready to go. I try to make them throw over us. That causes more disruption. Hopefully we get an overthrow and we catch it. Always match numbers, always have a front pod. If your team is very experienced, I would say have your front lifter have their heels on the line, and your jumpers, your guys contesting in the air, have them face the opposition. Have them reading where they go. And what I also teach, so if we're doing a full defensive lineout, I have a front pod ready to go, trying to make them throw over us. But just say, that middle jumper, I have them moving. So they're facing the attack. I have them moving just to create disruption, just so it creates the attack is like, oh, that they're moving. And sometimes the official will say, all right, cut that out, whatever it is, just play to the official. But defensively, your guys that are looking for the overthrow, have them active, have them moving their feet, trying to match where they're going. Because if we always lift in the front, they're trying to throw over us. Any other questions? Or any scenarios? Anything? So what we kind of did for lineouts is, to me this is simple, but we create our own language, our own terminology, and we're not calling it at the line. I'm not yelling it from the sideline. These players, they're kind of dictating where this goes, because I truly believe we train a lot of skills. All right, if they match up with us at the beat, we train skills so much where we feel like our execution, getting a person up in the air as high as possible, should take over for that. So Scrum, attacking scrums. So back row moves are best utilized that I've seen. One, you got a 5-meter scrum. If you're 9 and 10, it gets a lot of pressure. So if you have that opposite 9, just creating chaos off your scrum, applying a lot of pressure to your 10, 8-man pick's always a good option. If you're trying to control the game, slow it down, time manage, to me, an 8-man pick, a back row play, is just kind of setting that attack, that first phase. One, so our back line can see where the gaps are. Give them a little bit more time to see the open space. If we do an 8-man pick, my players know that it's just one phase. So one phase for the forwards. So we do an 8-man move, they crash through, whatever it is. Then they all know that that next phase is going towards the back line. So we're not going to do an 8-man pick, then another forward pick. We're not going to do that over and over. The idea is to really keep pressure off our 9s and 10s. Just one move off a scrum with the forwards, and then let our backline attack. In my preference, I really don't like doing 8-man picks in the midfield. You will have to do it if your 9s and 10s get a lot of pressure. But what happens best for us is in the side channels, the 5 and 15 meter channels on either side of the field. Why? Because I like those wingers attacking with them. So the channels, right? 5 and 15 meter channels, that's where I like the 8-man pick. And that's what works best for us. In the midfield, if you do an 8-man pick like that, your backline, if it's an inexperienced team, a lot of times the backs are like, oh, when do I crash through? I want to attack on the side channels because then you have a full backline set ready running those set moves. All right, so this looks clustered. So we got the right side of the field, left side of the field. And we have a term, Ringo. So Ringo is a right man pick, Lucky's a left man pick. So your 8-man is dictating, they have the option. So they're dictating where we go, what we're doing. So you have to trust, and you have to train them too. Like this stuff, don't go pick it and just go bull rush through. Don't just attack. Like attack, yes, but you have options, right? We can see 9 here is the option as well. They're either looking inside for an offload inside or an offload support as well. And then so we're attacking on the sideline or near touch, right? We have the wing crashing through as well, either a skip pass or ruck support too, right? So train your 8-man to not, yes, if we're on the 5 meter line, look to attack, look to score, but also let them know you have options. So if we're on the sideline like this, your touch, your 9, your wing is getting incorporated with your back row, and then your flanker on that side is also ruck support. And ideally, when I train my flanker is, you're really not involved with that first move unless you break the gain line. So if you break the gain line, your flanker on that side or your fullback crashing through is your second phase support. So if you have a scrum in the midfield, some more options. So 9, 10, and center is involved too. But what we're trying to do is 8 is the decision maker. They're coming off the edge of that scrum. What you really need to do is train your flanker is that they have to loop around, get behind that 8-man. Right now off the scrum, they're right in front of them. So teach them to go around them. And they can get a handoff or a pop pass on the outside. With that flanker, one can't get in the way, and they have to learn, like a J line, go behind them. 9 is also an inside-outside option. You're really training your 9s. Just look at your 8-man. If they've got inside pressure, go towards the outside. If that flanker or defensive 8-man, if they over-pursue, over-commit, train your 9 to cut inside. But also, if your 8-man's really experienced, really skilled, they can take that edge, get that flanker committed to them, and then they've got a crashing center crashing through for a nice little spin pass. So I really ideally don't like 8-man picks in the midfield, but there's a time for it. If your 9s and 10s are getting a lot of pressure, but I like 8-man picks on the edges for sure. Any questions on attacking scrums? 8-man picks. Yeah.
I think from the defensive standpoint, actually, with 8-man pick, you prefer to have the flanker come off the meter right away, or flanker takes outside of it, and then your 8-man catches up on the 8?
I tell flanker take the first man, and then 8-man just 8-man's actually staying home, staying to the ruck to take a crashing wing or fullback on the inside. So I tell that 8-man. So flanker takes that 8-man pick, and our 8-man, defensive 8-man, stays inside for anybody crashing through. And then I just have to trust my 10, my back line to just make the outside tackles from there. Todd's giving me a 5-minute, get ready to go. But any other questions on attacking scrums or defensive scrums? For me, they're not a big part of my game plan. I like attacking backline off of scrums. I really don't do a lot of 8-man picks. That just works for us. But, our thing is, really, I mean, there's a time and place for it, but we really do it if we're playing a stronger team. If we're really dictating the game, controlling the game, we don't really do anything. So, kind of recap, this is kind of educating your players, kind of teaching your players to not rely on coach yelling from the sideline. Teaching them know where to play, make calls on their own, be just aware of their situation, and have some sort of organization on the field. Also, rep every single player at different positions, because you're going to have subs, you're going to have injuries, you're going to have cards. If you're a typical lineout caller or a person that making that pre-call huddle, if they have to come out for a blood injury, whatever it is, you just got to have a backup plan. So make sure you're repping everybody through, making calls, making decisions in different positions as well. So as you make the approach, make them simple, make them consistent, because you should rely on the technical part. Actually getting good lift up in the air, good scrum binds, good footing. You should rely on those aspects. And when we go back to restarts, like your kicker, know your personnel. If you're relying on them to kick it high and 10, and they just can't do that, you got to switch it up. And go back, go. Yeah. Well, thank you guys. Everything, for this whole weekend, I'm excited for it. I think we're growing. But if you guys have any questions, you just want to talk, I'll be in the recruiting room. And yeah, thank you guys for your time.